Welcome to the deep dive. It's really great to have you here with us today, especially considering the territory we are exploring.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a big topic.
It is because we are looking at an experience that is almost, well, it's universally frustrating. You decide you want to lose a little weight, right? You set a goal, you clear out your pantry, buy all the healthy groceries, lace up the
You
sneakers.
do the whole routine.
Exactly. And you start out incredibly strong. For a few weeks, the system works. You feel fantastic. But then, almost inevitably, you hit this invisible wall.
Right, the plateau.
The scale just stops moving entirely, and you feel like you are doing absolutely everything right. You're following the rules, you're putting in the effort, but your body just stubbornly refuses to cooperate. It is maddening. You start questioning your own biology, wondering if your metabolism is fundamentally broken, or if you are just genetically destined to stay at this exact weight no matter what you do.
That feeling of hitting a wall is insanely common, and it often leads people to believe they are fighting a losing battle against their own physiology.
But without an accurate map of how the body actually processes and prioritizes energy, you are essentially flying blind. You put in a massive amount of effort, but the return on investment just disappears. And that is precisely why today's deep dive is so vital. We are stepping completely away from the noise of fitness influencers.
Oh, definitely. We have to.
Yeah, away from the promises of magical supplements and those highly unrealistic 30-day transformation programs.
Because we are grounding this entire discussion in a translated document we've been analyzing, the title lays out the premise perfectly. It's called 20 Reasons Why You Can't Lose Weight, or How to Lose Weight Without Exercising.
It's a great title.
It really is. Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission for you today is to cut through all that societal noise. We want to systematically break down the specific, often entirely invisible biological and behavioral barriers that actively sabotage your weight loss.
The invisible ones are the worst.
They are. We are looking at the traps that are so seamlessly integrated into daily life that you don't even realize you are falling into them. Because the reality here is, struggling to lose weight isn't just a matter of not knowing what foods to avoid. I mean, if it were merely an information deficit regarding what is healthy and what isn't, very few people would actually struggle.
Everyone knows a salad is better than a donut.
Exactly. Today is about understanding the underlying mechanics. We need to look at why the human body, when placed in our modern, highly engineered environment, makes maintaining a calorie deficit so deceptively difficult. It is a highly complex web of evolutionary biology, human psychology, and modern marketing.
All of it effectively conspiring to keep your body mass exactly where it is.
Precisely.
So the documentation establishes a fundamental premise right out of the gate, and it is a mathematical reality that underpins absolutely everything else we're going to discuss today. Weight loss, stripped of all the emotion and the marketing.
It's just an energy equation.
It is an energy equation. If you consume more energy measured in calories than your body utilizes to keep you alive and moving, you store the excess as fat. If you consume less than you burn, you force the body to tap into those fat stores, resulting in weight loss. You simply have to create an energy deficit.
Right.
Now, the baseline metric the text provides is quite sobering when you sit down and look at the actual numbers. To lose 1 single kilogram of body fat, you have to create a deficit of roughly 7,000 kilocalories.
Yeah, that number, 7,000 kilocalories for a single kilogram, it really puts the sheer scale of the challenge into perspective for you.
It's a huge number.
It is. If you want to lose that kilogram over the course of a single week, you are looking at a required deficit of 1,000 calories every single day.
Which is brutal.
It's a massive, often completely unsustainable reduction for most people. That's exactly why a slower approach of a 500-calorie daily deficit is generally recommended by professionals. But even though the math sounds incredibly straightforward on paper, achieving and accurately maintaining that deficit is notoriously difficult.
Why is that?
Well, this brings us to the very first trap identified in the materials: miscalculating your baseline needs. People frequently set an entirely inaccurate energy ceiling because they have no real concept of what their body actually burns at rest.
Let alone with activity.
Right.
We see this all the time. You might just guess your daily burn based on a feeling. You would think to yourself, well, I walked to the train today and I stood at my standing desk for 3 hours, so I probably burned around 2,500 calories.
Just pulling numbers out of thin air.
Completely out of thin air. Or we rely on the wildly inaccurate readouts from a treadmill at the gym. When you do that, you set yourself up for failure from day one because your entire mathematical foundation is built on a total guess.
It's a faulty foundation.
Yeah. The documentation strongly advises abandoning the guesswork entirely. It says to use verified energy requirement calculators to find your basal metabolic rate, your BMR, and your total daily energy expenditure. Even better, it suggests consulting a registered dietitian to establish a truly accurate, personalized baseline.
Because the psychological blind spot we have regarding our own behavior is vast. We are notoriously terrible at estimating both our energetic output and our caloric input.
We really are.
But let's assume you get that baseline number perfectly right. Let's say a professional gives you your exact daily caloric limit to create that perfect 500-calorie deficit. You still have the monumental task of accurately tracking what you eat. And the text points out a massive, everyday hurdle right here: innocent omissions.
I love that term. Well, I don't love it, but the term innocent omissions perfectly captures the danger. It sounds harmless, right? But it completely undermines a diet. This is the reality of bad tracking.
Yeah.
You might sit down at the end of the day and meticulously log your breakfast oatmeal, your lunch salad, your chicken dinner. But your brain conveniently discards the innocent habitual foods. It forgets the handful of almonds you grabbed while walking through the kitchen.
Or the crust you ate off your kid's sandwich.
Exactly. Or the 2 bites of your partner's dessert. Those things simply vanish from your memory because they weren't structured meals. You didn't sit down with a plate.
The human brain is actually designed to automate repetitive or minor tasks to save cognitive energy. So grabbing a passing snack just doesn't trigger the same cognitive recording process as sitting down with utensils.
How do we fix it?
The text suggests a highly practical observational exercise to combat this blind spot. For a few days, write down literally every single thing that crosses your lips.
Everything.
Everything. Don't alter your diet to look better on paper, just observe it meticulously. When you review that log after a few days, the invisible calories are dragged into the light. People are consistently shocked to discover that those innocent little bites easily add up to 300 or 400 calories.
Which entirely erases the deficit they thought they were maintaining.
Completely wipes it out.
It is the ultimate reality check for your habits. But let's play out a scenario where your tracking is flawless. Okay? Monday through Friday, you are locked in, you hit your numbers, you maintain that 500-calorie deficit each day, you feel disciplined, you feel totally in control, and then the weekend arrives.
Oh, the weekend.
Yes. This is what the documentation categorizes as the lack of consistency trap. It is the weekend warrior paradox, and it is where so many well-intentioned diets just go to die.
Mathematically, this behavioral pattern is devastating. Think about it. During the work week, your environment is heavily structured. You have a set schedule, pre-planned meals, minimal variables.
You're at the office, you have your packed lunch.
Right. But the weekend removes all that structure. You loosen the psychological rules you've set for yourself. The internal monologue shifts to, well, I've been so incredibly disciplined all week. I deserve a reward. I deserve to relax.
So the structure crumbles entirely. You go out for a heavy dinner on Saturday night, maybe have a few drinks. Sunday involves a big brunch with friends, followed by a lazy afternoon snacking on the couch.
It doesn't even feel like a binge.
No, it just feels like a normal, enjoyable weekend.
But the math doesn't care about your sense of reward. Let's really break down the numbers on that because it's mind-blowing. Over your 5 structured days, Monday through Friday, that 500-calorie deficit yielded a total weekly deficit of 2,500 calories.
You are totally on track to weight loss.
You are. But on Saturday and Sunday, when you loosen the reins, you overconsume. Let's say you eat 12,250 calories over your maintenance level each day. As you noted, that isn't a massive, uncontrollable binge. That is merely a rich restaurant meal, a few alcoholic beverages, and maybe a dessert.
Very easy to do.
Incredibly easy. But those 2 days of a 12,250 calorie surplus completely eradicate the 2,500 calorie deficit you worked so hard to build over 5 days. By Monday morning, your net energy balance for the week is exactly 0.
Wow.
It is exactly as if your discipline Monday through Friday never even occurred.
That mathematical reality is brutal. But it perfectly explains the phenomenon of the permanent dieter. People feel like they are constantly restricting themselves, constantly suffering, yet the scale never moves. They are essentially running in place because their weekends are resetting the board every single week.
Exactly.
The text offers a very strategic takeaway for this, though. It's all about anticipatory budgeting.
Right, planning ahead.
If you know you have a heavy social dinner planned for Saturday night, you cannot just react to it in the moment. You have to proactively plan for it by eating significantly less earlier in the day. You keep your breakfast and lunch incredibly light, heavily focusing on lean proteins and vegetables, just to protect your daily calorie limit and leave a massive buffer for that dinner.
It shifts weight loss from a test of willpower to a test of resource management. You have a finite energy budget for the week, and if you want to spend heavily on Saturday night, you have to save up for it beforehand.
Yeah. And that blindness to what we are actually consuming bleeds right into our drinking habits, which is arguably an even bigger blind spot. Here's where it gets really interesting. When we conceptualize overeating, we almost always picture massive quantities of solid food.
Huge plates of pasta.
Towering burgers, a whole pizza. But some of the most concentrated, dangerous calorie bombs are entirely liquid. Drinkable energy is a massive saboteur.
It is perhaps the most insidious trap because liquid calories fundamentally bypass our body's mechanical satiety signals.
How so?
Well, when you eat solid food, the physical act of chewing initiates the digestive process and sends signals to your brain. The bulk of the food physically stretches the stomach. Liquids do absolutely none of this. They pass rapidly through the digestive tract, delivering a massive dose of energy without ever making you feel full.
The statistics provided in the documentation are genuinely eye-opening on this. A single glass of fruit juice or a sweetened fruit drink beverages that are heavily marketed to us as healthy, natural choices, by the way, typically contains around 100 to 120 kilocalories.
When you apply the math of our 500-calorie daily deficit goal to that, the impact is staggering. Consuming just one single glass of juice wipes out roughly 20 to 25% of your entire day's progress.
Just one glass.
One glass.
Yeah.
And because it offered zero mechanical satiety, you are just as hungry as you were before you drank it. If you are regularly consuming sweetened, colorful drinks and not religiously accounting for them in your daily tracking, you are fighting a battle you cannot win. The text is definitive on this. You must either eliminate them completely or track them with absolute precision.
And if juice is a problem, we really have to look at the elephant in the room. Alcohol.
Oh, boy.
This is the truth nobody really wants to confront, but the data is unyielding.
Yeah.
Pure alcohol, or ethanol, is incredibly energy-dense. In fact, it is nearly as caloric per gram as pure dietary fat.
It is a massive source of invisible energy, and the physiological response makes it even worse. The human body registers ethanol as a toxin.
A literal poison.
A literal poison. Therefore, when you consume alcohol, your liver immediately stops prioritizing the metabolism of fats and carbohydrates. Its primary urgent objective becomes clearing the toxin from your system.
Meaning your fat burning just shuts down.
Exactly. Not only are you ingesting a high amount of calories, but you are actively putting your body's fat-burning processes on complete hold until the alcohol is processed.
The raw numbers the text gives us really paint the picture. One standard glass of wine is roughly 100 kilocalories. A standard 50 milliliter pour of whiskey is 120 kilocalories. And a single bottle of beer is a massive 250 kilocalories.
You really have to view those numbers through the lens of social normalization. Imagine sitting down to watch a football game on a Sunday afternoon. Over the course of 3 hours, you casually drink 2 beers.
Very normal behavior.
Extremely normal. But that is 500 calories. You have instantly obliterated your entire daily deficit right there on the couch, and that doesn't even account for any snacks you might eat while watching. Or consider going to dinner with friends and splitting a bottle of wine, ending up with 2 or 3 glasses. Our social environment normalizes and encourages this intake, making it feel like a standard part of winding down. But your metabolism is completely blind to the social context. It only registers the massive influx of energy.
It just wipes the slate clean without you even realizing it. And speaking of things that wipe out deficits under the radar, the materials delve into the trap of unconscious eating. Think about the mechanics of cooking dinner at home. This is the tasting trap. You are making a pasta sauce, so you take a spoonful to check the salt.
A little pinch of shredded cheese while prepping the salad.
Exactly. You try noodle to see if it's al dente.
In the isolated moment, a single noodle or a teaspoon of sauce seems infinitesimally small. The cognitive dissonance is really strong there. We convince ourselves that a taste doesn't technically count as food.
Because it's not on a plate.
Right. But when you engage in that behavior multiple times a day, every time you prepare a meal, those unrecorded calories compound rapidly. It can easily add hundreds of calories to your daily intake, completely disrupting the energy balance. The text explicitly advises that if you want your diet to be effective, you have to implement a strict personal ban on snacking and tasting while cooking.
Which is hard.
Very hard. But attempting to accurately estimate and log those microbites is practically impossible.
It is incredibly difficult to track a teaspoon of sauce. But If cooking at home is fraught with tasting traps, dining out is an entirely different level of risk.
Hmm.
When you go to a restaurant, you are stepping into an environment where you have absolutely zero control or visibility over how your food is prepared.
That lack of visibility is the core issue. Very few restaurant menus provide accurate nutritional information. And honestly, even when they do, the reality in the kitchen often varies wildly from the printed numbers.
The chef might have a heavy hand with the oil that day.
Exactly. You have to remember the primary objective of a restaurant chef. It is to make the food taste as incredible as possible so that you come back. Their goal is not to help you maintain a calorie deficit. And the easiest, most effective culinary tool to enhance flavor and mouthfeel is fat.
Exactly. You might order a salad, genuinely believing you are making the responsible, low-calorie choice. But you have no idea that the dressing is heavily emulsified with half a cup of oil. You order a seemingly innocent piece of pan-seared chicken, completely unaware of the sheer volume of butter used to baste it in the pan.
You are operating completely blind. A restaurant meal that you might mentally estimate at 600 calories could very easily exceed 1,200 calories once you account for the hidden fats, the oils, and the heavy sauces thickened with flour or butter.
This is a vital realization for you listening right now. If you are constantly hitting a plateau, it is highly likely that your issue isn't a fundamental lack of willpower or a broken metabolism. You are simply trying to navigate a modern dietary landscape that is densely packed with hidden, unrecorded calories.
You are playing a game where the rules and the math are deliberately obscured from you.
And that obscurity isn't an accident. In many ways, it is a feature of the modern food industry. When we step out of restaurants and into the grocery store, we actively look for signals to help us make good choices. We look for shortcuts to tell us what is healthy. But the documentation points out that those signals are frequently and deliberately misleading.
The grocery store is an absolute minefield of deception.
It really is.
Yeah.
Let's look at the marketing illusions the text specifically highlights. You walk down the cereal aisle or the snack aisle, and you see products plastered with words like fit, slim, or active.
It is a masterclass in behavioral psychology and deceptive marketing. The text brings up a crucial legal reality that most consumers are completely unaware of. Terms like fit and slim are legally unregulated in many jurisdictions.
Wait, unregulated entirely?
Entirely. There are no strict nutritional benchmarks, no maximum calorie counts, and no sugar limits that a product must adhere to in order to print those words in bold letters on their packaging.
So the words are entirely meaningless from a nutritional standpoint. A manufacturer could legally print fit on a box of refined sugar if they felt like it.
Precisely. The strategy is to exploit human psychology by creating a health halo. When you see the word fit on a granola bar or a box of breakfast cereal, your brain subconsciously categorizes it as a safe food. Your guard drops.
You don't even look at the label.
Exactly. But the documentation explicitly warns that these so-called fit products are frequently loaded with massive amounts of added sugars to make them palatable, which consequently drives up their caloric density. The actionable advice here is non-negotiable. You must train yourself to completely ignore the front of the packaging.
The front is just an ad.
The front is purely advertising designed to manipulate you. The back of the package, the nutritional label, and the raw ingredient list is the only place where the actual truth resides.
You have to become a skeptic in the grocery aisle. Don't let the glossy marketing dictate your choices. But the text goes deeper than just the misleading calories in these packaged goods. It dives into the actual science of highly processed foods, and it reveals a problem that is far more insidious than just a high energy density. It points out that junk food and highly engineered foods can trigger genuinely addictive behaviors.
This shifts the entire paradigm of weight loss. It moves the conversation away from a simple lack of discipline and directly into the realm of neurobiology. Highly processed foods do not exist in nature. They are meticulously engineered in laboratories to hit what food scientists call the bliss point.
The bliss point. That sounds terrifyingly scientific.
It is. This is the mathematically perfect ratio of sugar, fat, and salt designed to trigger a massive unnatural release of dopamine in your brain's reward center.
So when you eat these foods, your brain is essentially being hijacked by the chemistry. It is not just that the food tastes good. It is structurally designed to make you crave more of it.
Exactly. The text highlights that scientists have demonstrated how these engineered foods can lead to addictive eating patterns. Because of this powerful neurobiological response, the common dietary advice of allowing yourself occasional sins or cheat meals with highly processed foods is incredibly dangerous.
It reawakens the craving.
Yes. Consuming that single treat can instantly reawaken dormant cravings, overwhelming your prefrontal cortex, the logical part of your brain trying to maintain the diet. Very quickly, those occasional sins morph back into daily habits, and the diet collapses. The text strongly recommends that when your goal is weight loss, you are far better off avoiding these highly processed triggers altogether, rather than trying to moderate a substance that is literally designed to be immoderate.
Okay, so we know we need to avoid the fake fit marketing and the dopamine spiking junk food. But what does the documentation say we should be actively adding to our diets? What is the missing component that actually helps us? The text is unequivocal on this. It is fiber.
Dietary fiber is arguably your most powerful ally when attempting to maintain a caloric deficit. To understand why, we have to look at the mechanics of the digestive system. Fiber is a type of carbohydrate found in plant foods that the human body simply lacks the enzymes to break down and digest.
But if we can't digest it, how does something we can't even break down actually help us lose body fat? The text outlines some very specific physiological mechanisms.
It does. The first mechanism is chemical. If we connect this to the bigger picture, soluble dietary fiber physically binds to glucose and free fatty acids within your digestive tract. By doing this, it actively lowers the rate and the total amount of these nutrients that are absorbed through the intestinal wall and into your bloodstream.
So it basically catches the calories before they enter your system.
It essentially traps a portion of the energy you consumed and carries it out of your body as waste, which directly reduces the total energy available for storage as fat.
That is incredible. It literally blocks some of the calories.
It does, but the second mechanism is perhaps even more crucial for daily compliance, and that is its effect on satiety. Fiber physically expands by absorbing water in your stomach. This expansion significantly delays gastric emptying, meaning the food stays in your stomach longer.
You feel fuller longer.
Exactly. This triggers the mechanical stretch receptors in your stomach wall, sending sustained, powerful signals to your brain that you are full. It effectively neutralizes hunger for hours.
It acts like a natural, built-in appetite suppressant.
Precisely. And the text points out the disastrous effects of the inverse scenario. A diet lacking in dietary fiber, which accurately describes the standard modern diet heavily reliant on processed foods, does the exact opposite. Without fiber to slow things down, your digestion is incredibly rapid. This leads to massive spikes and subsequent crashes in your blood sugar.
Which makes you crash and feel starving.
Right. It triggers intense gnawing hunger pangs shortly after you finish eating. Trying to maintain a 500-calorie deficit on a low-fiber diet requires monumental willpower because you are constantly fighting your body's urgent signals to eat.
Which perfectly sets up the next major hurdle we need to discuss. Because when people are trapped in that cycle of hunger, when they feel that constant deprivation, they often make a massive logical misstep. They assume that if eating a little bit less is good for weight loss, then eating drastically less must be vastly superior. Let's look at the biological backfire when the body actively fights back against your diet. This is the starvation trap.
The starvation trap is biologically disastrous, yet it remains the most persistent myth in diet culture. People become frustrated with slow progress, so they drastically slash their caloric intake, attempting a crash diet, a prolonged fast, or just surviving on practically nothing.
We've all seen people do this. We've probably done it ourselves.
Yeah.
But what does the documentation say actually happens inside the body when you drop your calories that low?
The text is absolute on this point. Extreme caloric deficits practically guarantee severe hormonal imbalances and inevitably lead to the yo-yo effect. The fundamental issue is that your body has absolutely no concept of modern aesthetics.
It doesn't care about your beach vacation.
No, it doesn't know you are restricting calories to look good for a wedding. When you suddenly drop your intake to extreme lows, your evolutionary biology interprets that sudden lack of energy as a famine. It assumes you are in a literal survival scenario and are slowly starving to death.
So instead of just burning fat, the body shifts into crisis mode.
It initiates a massive biological counteroffensive to keep you alive. The text describes this as the activation of a powerful biochemical machinery. The most immediate effect is what is referred to as wolf hunger.
Wolf hunger. That sounds intense.
This is critical to understand. This is not a mild, passing craving for a snack. It is an overwhelming, biologically driven compulsion to binge eat. Your body floods your system with hunger hormones, aggressively demanding that you seek out and consume the most energy-dense foods possible to survive the perceived famine.
That frames the whole concept of a cheat day in a totally different light. When someone on an extreme crash diet finally snaps and eats everything in their kitchen, it isn't a moral failing or a lack of discipline. It is their fundamental survival biology completely overpowering their logical prefrontal cortex.
Exactly. You cannot out-willpower millions of years of evolutionary survival mechanisms. And the defense mechanisms don't stop at hunger. The text points out that to survive the famine, your body becomes incredibly stingy with the energy it does have. It initiates a process called metabolic adaptation. It actively downregulates your non-exercise activity
Or
thermogenesis.
NEAT, right? Let's unpack NEAT for a second, because that's a crucial concept.
NEAT encompasses all the calories you burn doing everything that isn't sleeping, eating, or dedicated exercise. It's the energy used when you fidget, when you maintain your posture, when you talk with your hands, when you tap your foot.
All the little subconscious movements.
Right. When you starve yourself, your brain unconsciously shuts all of that down to hoard calories. You become lethargic. You take the elevator instead of the stairs. You sit heavily instead of standing. Furthermore, your body lowers your core temperature and slows down non-essential cellular functions. Your metabolic rate drops significantly.
So you were starving, you were miserable, you were fighting off wolf hunger, and the scale still isn't moving.
Because your body has slowed its burn rate to match your drastically low intake.
If you are listening to this right now and you are eating 1,000 calories a day and not losing an ounce, this is exactly why. Your body is fighting you tooth and nail to keep you alive. And this biological reality completely exposes the whole culture of fad diets that flood our social media feeds. You see these miracle plans promising you will drop 10 pounds in a week, the juice cleanses, the cabbage soup diets, the extreme eliminations.
The documentation addresses these directly. It acknowledges that the internet is saturated with dozens of these so-called miracle diets, but it grounds the reality in harsh biological facts. They do not work long-term. Even worse, because they typically eliminate entire macronutrient groups or severely restrict variety, they rapidly cause severe nutritional deficiencies. The text warns that engaging in these extreme, unbalanced diets can cause lasting damage to your metabolic health.
So if the fad diets are all illusions, what is the actual biological truth of the matter?
The text strips away all the marketing and leaves us with the only two principles that actually dictate success. The only truth in sustainable weight loss is maintaining a reasonable, moderate negative calorie balance, one that doesn't trigger the starvation response, and maintaining healthy hormonal function. If your dietary approach is so extreme that it wrecks your endocrine system, failure is biologically guaranteed.
Let's pivot and talk specifically about those hormones, because the documentation brings up a highly effective tool for weight loss that takes place entirely outside of the kitchen and the gym. It is something so basic we often ignore it entirely: sleep.
The research on sleep and metabolic health is fascinating, and it is frequently overlooked. Modern culture often treats sleep as a luxury or merely a state of being turned off to rest our muscles. But endocrinologically, sleep is an incredibly active period. It is when your metabolic house is cleaned, repaired, and structurally organized for the following day.
So how precisely does a bad night of sleep actively ruin our ability to maintain a diet? The text points to two very specific hormones.
It highlights leptin and ghrelin, which operate as the master controllers of your daily appetite. Think of leptin as the satiety hormone. It is produced by your fat cells and sends a signal to your brain saying, "We have enough stored energy, you are full, you can stop eating."
Okay, so leptin tells us to stop.
Right. Ghrelin, conversely, is the hunger hormone. It is produced in the stomach and signals your brain energy reserves are low, go find food immediately. The text notes that scientists have repeatedly proven that sleep deprivation, or even poor quality sleep, severely disrupts the natural secretion cycles of these two crucial hormones.
What does that disruption actually look like for someone waking up after, say, 5 hours of sleep?
The hormonal profile shifts drastically against you. Your leptin levels plummet, meaning the signal telling you that you are full is muted. You can eat a large meal and still not feel truly satisfied.
You're just a bottomless pit.
Exactly. And simultaneously, your ghrelin levels spike artificially high. This makes you feel ravenously hungry. And crucially, ghrelin specifically drives cravings for quick, dense energy, meaning simple carbohydrates and sugars. You wake up hormonally primed and chemically driven to overeat.
You are literally fighting a biological uphill battle before your feet even hit the floor in the morning. And the text also mentions the downstream behavioral consequence of that lack of sleep.
Yes, the sheer reality of fatigue. When you are sleep deprived, your energy levels are low. As we discussed with the starvation response, your body naturally and unconsciously compensates for this fatigue by reducing your physical activity throughout the day. You sit more, you move less, you take shortcuts to avoid exertion.
You park closer to the store.
Right. This reduced movement directly and significantly lowers your total daily caloric expenditure, further shrinking your energy deficit without you making any conscious choice to do so.
Wow. Okay, so we have covered the mathematics of the deficit, the hidden liquid calories, the deceptive marketing, and the biological starvation response. Now, we need to transition into a set of variables that are incredibly frustrating because they don't actually contain calories, yet they totally mess with the number on the scale. Let's look at salt, water, and the timing of how we eat. Let's start with what the text calls the salt surprise. Now, a grain of salt has 0 calories. It provides no energy. So why does the documentation flag it as a major roadblock for weight loss?
The documentation outlines 2 distinct reasons why excess salt consumption can derail your progress, and the first is entirely mechanical and immediate: massive water retention. Sodium is an essential mineral, and it operates by pulling water into your cells and tissues. When you consume a heavy excess of dietary salt, your body is forced to hold on to an excess volume of water to maintain its internal saline balance.
Dilutes the salt.
Right. The text notes that this physiological mechanism alone can add roughly a full kilogram over 2 pounds of pure water weight to your scale almost overnight.
Which is absolutely demoralizing for anyone trying to lose weight.
Yeah.
You can eat perfectly, hit all your macros, maintain your deficit, but you have a highly salty meal, and the next morning the scale jumps up 2 pounds. You instantly assume you gained body fat, but it's entirely an illusion caused by water.
It completely masks your actual fat loss and can easily crush your motivation. It leads people to abandon their diet out of sheer frustration. But the text also points to a second, more insidious metabolic reason. It mentions that emerging scientific research suggests chronic excess salt intake might actually alter the pathways of fat metabolism.
Alter them how?
It may biochemically influence the body to favor fat accumulation and storage. So the danger isn't merely temporary water weight. A chronically high salt intake might structurally shift your metabolism towards storage over time.
We do need to be clear here, and the documentation handles this impartially. Sodium is a fundamental requirement for human life. We need it for proper nerve transmission, muscle contraction, and basic cellular hydration. The text isn't demonizing salt inherently.
Correct. The issue is not the salt shaker sitting on your dining table. The text emphasizes that the genuinely harmful, excessive levels of sodium in the modern diet come almost entirely from highly processed and manufactured foods. The food industry saturates these products with hidden sodium because it acts as a highly effective, cheap preservative, and it aggressively enhances flavor.
So once again, the solution points back to avoiding the heavily processed junk. Now, looking at the inverse of salt retention, let's examine the power of water. And I want to clarify right off the bat, the text explicitly mocks the internet myths surrounding magical lemon water detoxes or fat-melting potions.
Yeah.
We're talking purely about the physiological impact of regular plain water.
Yes, the documentation strips away the mysticism and focuses purely on the scientifically backed physiological benefits of proper hydration, listing 3 specific advantages for weight loss. The first is perhaps the most practical: substitution. By consciously drinking water frequently throughout the day, you naturally replace the consumption of those highly caloric sweetened drinks we discussed earlier.
You're just swapping them out.
Exactly. The text cites observations where individuals who simply swap their juices and fruit drinks for water automatically reduce their total daily calorie intake by 10 to 13%.
That is a massive, automatic caloric deficit generated without having to restrict food at all.
It is arguably the easiest, highest leverage behavioral change you can make. The second benefit involves mechanical satiety. Drinking a substantial amount of water immediately before or during a meal physically takes up volume within your stomach. Much like fiber, this volume helps to trigger the stomach's stretch receptors, sending early neural signals of fullness to the brain.
So you stop eating sooner.
Consequently, you are highly likely to consume a smaller total volume of food during that meal before feeling satisfied.
And the text outlines a third benefit, which is actually a metabolic boost, right?
Yes, the third benefit is directly metabolic. The documentation notes that scientists estimate drinking an adequate volume of water, specifically targeting around 2 liters a day, can actually accelerate fat metabolism and tangibly increase your resting energy expenditure by approximately 100 kilocalories a day.
A free 100 calories burned just from drinking water. How does that mechanism work?
It is largely due to thermogenesis. Your body expends energy to process the incoming water, absorb it, and particularly to heat it up to your internal core body temperature. Therefore, failing to drink enough water means you are actively leaving metabolic energy on the table and slowing down your potential rate of weight loss.
Okay, so we have established what we should be drinking. Now let's dig into the mechanics of how and when we actually consume our food. I hear this specific diet myth constantly, and I am so glad the text addresses it directly. The idea that you shouldn't eat anything after 6 p.m. because it will instantly turn to fat while you sleep.
The documentation rightly debunks that concept as complete biological nonsense. Your gastrointestinal tract does not contain a clock that arbitrarily shuts down at 6 p.m. A calorie of energy consumed at 8 p.m. contains the exact same energetic value and is processed by the exact same metabolic pathways as a calorie consumed at 8 a.m.
So theoretically, we could eat a midnight meal, and as long as we are in a deficit, we will still lose weight.
Biologically speaking, yes. However, the text highlights a major behavioral risk that makes late-night eating incredibly problematic for weight loss. It isn't about the biological timing. It is about the state of mind you are in at that hour.
Oh, okay.
When we eat late in the evening or late at night, we are typically physically exhausted, our cognitive willpower is completely depleted from the day's decisions, and we are almost always distracted by a screen, whether we are watching television or endlessly scrolling on a phone.
So the danger is the lack of mindfulness. At 10 p.m., we aren't carefully weighing out a portion of lean protein at the dining table. We are mindlessly eating ice cream straight out of the carton on the couch.
Exactly. The distraction and the fatigue lead us to select highly palatable, energy-dense snack foods, and we exercise significantly less portion control because we aren't paying attention to the act of eating, which directly connects to a fascinating mechanical aspect of eating that the text introduces, something we rarely consider: the simple act of chewing.
The idea that how we chew can impact weight loss seems almost too simple. What does the documentation say about it?
The text cites scientific data demonstrating that the speed at which you eat profoundly impacts appetite regulation. Slow eating actively reduces the risk of overconsumption. The specific, actionable recommendation provided by the text is to drastically increase the number of times you chew before swallowing, aiming for 15 to 20 chews for every single bite.
15 to 20 times per bite. If you actually try that, it feels like an eternity for one mouthful of food. Why is slowing down the mechanical process so critical?
There are deep neurobiological reasons for this. First, it physically forces you to stretch out the duration of the meal. The biological signaling system between your gut and your brain is not instantaneous.
It takes time for the signals to travel.
Yes. It takes approximately 20 minutes for your stomach to release the hormone cholecystokinin, or CCK, which travels to your brain to signal that you are satiated. If you inhale your entire meal in 5 minutes, you can easily consume hundreds of surplus calories before your brain ever receives the chemical message that you are full.
You are essentially outrunning your body's own communication network.
Precisely. And secondly, the act of thoroughly chewing breaks the food down into a much finer paste, increasing the surface area for your digestive enzymes to act upon. This improves the efficiency of digestion and nutrient absorption. The data clearly shows that by slowing down and allowing the CCK and the stomach's stretch receptors time to communicate with the brain, the total volume of food consumed in a single sitting naturally drops without feeling deprived.
So the simple act of putting your fork down between bites and actually chewing your food is a powerful, totally free tool to lower your caloric intake. That is a great insight. All right, we are rounding out our analysis by looking at the final overarching hurdles. Let's tackle physical exercise first. We have spent this entire deep dive barely mentioning the gym, which aligns with the document's subtitle about losing weight without exercising. But obviously, physical movement plays a role.
It absolutely plays a role. The documentation acknowledges that a sedentary lifestyle and a lack of physical activity decrease the overall efficiency and effectiveness of a weight loss journey. As we established, you have two primary levers to pull to create that 7,000 calorie deficit. You can consume less energy or you can expend more energy.
But the text advocates for a very specific, balanced approach to using those levers, doesn't it?
Yes, it strongly advises against going to behavioral extremes in either direction. The most sustainable, biologically effective method is combining a slight, highly manageable dietary restriction with a moderate increase in daily physical activity. By doing this, you avoid the starvation traps we discussed earlier, and you also avoid having to spend 2 grueling hours in the gym every single day. You distribute the stress of the deficit.
But here's where the text points out a massive psychological trap regarding exercise. It is the exercise illusion. Our brains completely lie to us about how hard we actually worked out.
It is one of the most common ways people sabotage a deficit. What's fascinating here is we vastly, almost comically, overestimate our caloric expenditure during exercise. You go for a 30-minute jog, you sweat profusely, your heart rate is up, you feel physically exhausted, and your brain tells you, I must have just burned at least 600 calories.
Naturally, you feel like you worked incredibly hard.
Believing this, you decide to reward yourself for your hard work with a 500-calorie muffin.
Because in your head, the math works out. You think you are still 100 calories in the negative for the day. But what is the biological reality?
In reality, that 30-minute jog likely only burned around 200 to 250 calories. The text points out how insidious this cognitive bias is. We systematically overestimate the burn. Furthermore, we think we hit our target intensity, but maybe we slightly shortened the running route.
Or skip the last set of weights.
Right. Maybe we skipped a set because we were tired. Maybe we took longer rest periods looking at our phones. The actual energetic output is almost always lower than we perceive. And when we eat back those phantom calories as a reward, we effectively shrink or completely eradicate the deficit we work to create. The crucial lesson here is, exercise is fantastic for your cardiovascular and metabolic health, but do not rely on it as your primary mathematical engine for weight loss, and never eat back the calories you assume you burned.
That is a harsh truth, but a necessary one to hear. Now, as we approach the conclusion of the material, we need to respectfully address a reality that the text highlights. For some people listening right now, you might be nodding along, you are doing everything right, your tracking is flawless, you prioritize sleep, you manage your weekends, and the scale remains completely frozen. The documentation acknowledges that sometimes the barrier isn't behavioral, it is a genuine medical roadblock.
Yes, the text outlines several specific medical conditions that actively and severely hinder weight loss by fundamentally disrupting the endocrine system and the body's metabolic pathways. It is vital to understand the mechanics of these conditions. For instance, the text specifically lists hypothyroidism and Hashimoto's disease.
Those affect the thyroid.
Exactly. The thyroid gland produces hormones like T3 and T4, which act as the throttle for your basal metabolic rate. If your thyroid is underactive or under autoimmune attack, as in Hashimoto's, that throttle is pulled back. Your baseline daily energy expenditure plummets, making a standard caloric deficit virtually impossible to achieve without medical intervention.
It also mentions issues with how the body handles energy storage, specifically insulin resistance and PCOS, right?
Yes. Let's look at insulin resistance. Normally, the hormone insulin acts as a key that unlocks your cells, allowing glucose from your bloodstream to enter and be used for energy. But with insulin resistance, the locks on the cells become jammed.
The sugar can't get in.
Right, the glucose can't get in. In response, your pancreas panics and pumps out mass amounts of excess insulin to force the issue. The critical problem for weight loss is that insulin is a primary fat storage hormone. When insulin levels are chronically high, it effectively locks your fat cells, preventing them from releasing stored energy.
And PCOS is tied to that.
Yes, PCOS, or polycystic ovary syndrome, heavily overlaps with this mechanism. It often features severe insulin resistance alongside hormonal imbalances like elevated androgens, creating a metabolic environment fiercely resistant to fat loss.
The text also lists depression as a major medical roadblock.
It does, and depression impacts weight loss on multiple fronts. Biochemically, it alters neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine, which can heavily disrupt appetite regulation and drive cravings for highly palatable comfort foods. Behaviorally, the profound lethargy and lack of motivation associated with depression often drastically reduce a person's physical activity and NEAT, lowering their overall energy expenditure.
If you are experiencing symptoms of any of these conditions, this is the point where you have to stop trying to fix the problem with a calorie tracking app and go see a medical professional. And the documentation goes one step further, pointing out that even the treatments for certain conditions can cause issues. It mentions specific medications.
Yes, the text explicitly names several classes of necessary prescription drugs that are scientifically documented to either halt weight loss or actively promote weight gain. It lists antidepressants, steroid medications, anti-epileptic drugs, and certain oral contraceptives. These medications can alter metabolic rates, increase appetite, or cause severe water retention.
But we should be very clear here.
Very clear. We must impartially and heavily stress, exactly as the source implies, that you must never, under any circumstances, alter your dosage or discontinue a prescribed medication without a direct consultation with your physician. If you suspect your necessary medication is the barrier to your weight loss, that is a complex medical conversation for you and your doctor to navigate safely.
Absolutely. Your fundamental health and medical stability always take precedence over a number on the scale. Okay, so we have deeply explored the math, the hidden liquids, the marketing deceptions, the biology of starvation, the mechanics of sleep and water, and the medical realities. As we look at the entire landscape the documentation has laid out, what is the ultimate conclusion? So what does this all mean? The text closes with a statistical reality that is, quite frankly, staggering. It reveals that successfully losing the weight, despite all of these complex traps we've discussed, isn't actually the hardest part of the journey.
It is not. The ultimate overarching challenge is the maintenance phase. The documentation reveals incredibly sobering data indicating that only 10 to 20% of individuals who successfully lose a significant amount of weight manage to maintain their new lower body mass over the course of the first year.
Only 10 to 20%.
Yes, the vast majority of people, 80 to 90%, regain the weight they worked so hard to lose.
That is incredibly daunting. Based on everything the text has outlined, why is the maintenance phase so uniquely difficult to survive?
Because the biological and environmental traps we have spent this time dissecting do not magically disappear the moment you hit your goal weight. In fact, biology actively fights against you. Once you have lost weight, your metabolic rate drops. A smaller body simply requires fewer calories to exist, so your new maintenance calories are lower than they used to be. Furthermore, your body's biological drive to return to its previous higher set point weight remains highly active for a long time, keeping hunger hormones elevated.
And the environment hasn't changed either.
Precisely. The deceptive fit marketing is still in the grocery aisles. The hidden oils are still in the restaurant meals. The societal pressure to consume alcohol is still present. What typically happens is people hit their goal weight, they feel a massive sense of victory, and they mentally clock out.
They stop paying attention.
They stop meticulously tracking, they relax their strict habits, and because their metabolic rate is lower and the environment is inherently designed to push them toward a caloric surplus, the weight slowly, almost imperceptibly, creeps back on.
But looking at the entirety of the text, the author isn't presenting this data to be depressing or defeatist.
Not at all. The underlying message of the documentation is fundamentally one of empowerment through education. It asserts that by thoroughly understanding all of the invisible traps discussed today, by having full conscious awareness of the biological, psychological, and environmental enemies, you are uniquely equipped to navigate around them.
The 10 to 20% who succeed do so because they remain vigilant.
Exactly. They understand that maintenance isn't the end of the journey. It is a continuation of the awareness they built. By keeping these mechanics in mind, you have the exact tools needed to be in that successful minority.
And that brings us to the end of our deep dive today. Thank you so much for joining us on this extensive journey through the complex mathematics, the stubborn evolutionary biology, and the sneaky marketing realities of weight loss. We hope that by illuminating these previously invisible barriers and explaining exactly how they operate, you feel far less frustrated and significantly more in control of your own body. Remember, deep knowledge of these hidden mechanisms truly is your greatest, most effective weapon for long-term success. It is not about demanding perfection from yourself. It is about cultivating a ruthless awareness of the environment around you.
And before we sign off, I want to leave you with a final, lingering thought to consider, directly inspired by the depth of the material we've unpacked today. We have thoroughly examined how our modern environment, from the legally unregulated fit labels designed to deceive us in the grocery aisles, to the massive influx of hidden dietary fats in our restaurant meals, right down to the high-stress, sleep-deprived lives we are conditioned to lead, seems structurally and meticulously designed to keep the human body in a constant state of caloric surplus.
That is undeniably true.
It raises a profound question for you to mull over. In a societal landscape that is so heavily engineered to make us overconsume and remain sedentary, is successfully maintaining long-term weight loss no longer merely a matter of personal diet, but actually the ultimate daily act of rebellion against modern society itself?
That is a phenomenal perspective, the ultimate act of rebellion. Incredibly powerful thought to carry with you and to chew on 15 to 20 times, of course. Thank you again for joining us for this deep dive. Keep questioning the information you're given, keep exploring the mechanics of the world around you, and we will catch you next time.